Officials speed a factor in Walker's deadly crash. Investigators sought to determine the cause of a fiery crash that killed Fast and Furious star Paul Walker, while the actor's fans erected a makeshift memorial Sunday near where the Porsche he was riding in smashed into a light pole and tree. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department said speed was a factor in Saturday's one-car crash, though it will take time to determine how fast the car was going. Because Walker is so closely associated with the underground culture of street racing, portrayed in the popular Fast and Furious film franchise, the fatal accident had an eerie quality, a tragic end for a Hollywood hero of speed. The crash also killed Walker's friend and financial advisor Roger Rodas, according to Walker's publicist, Anne Van Eyden. She said Walker was a passenger in the 2005 red Porsche Carrera GT when they drove away from a fundraiser in the community of Valencia, about 30 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles. Sheriff's deputies found the car engulfed in flames when they arrived at the site of the crash, near the fundraiser at Roda's sport car dealership. Officials have not identified the person found in the car. On Sunday, fans of Walker, 40, gathered to leave flowers, candles, and memorabilia from the action movies. His Fast and Furious co-star Tyrese Gibson broke down when he visited the crash site. Paul is the heartbeat of his franchise, and we've gonna see to it that his energy and presence lives on forever, Gibson later posted on his Instagram account. He also posted a video of the film cast and crew recently celebrating Walker's birthday. Sheriff's Deputy Peter Gomez said investigators are working to determine how fast the car was traveling and what caused it to go out of control, including whether the driver was distracted or something in the road prompted him to swerve. After Porsche crashed into a light pole and tree, it burst into flames. The downed light pole had the speed limit signed for 45 miles per hour. Walker rode the Fast and Furious franchise to fame, starring in all but one of the 6 action blockbusters, beginning with the first film in 2001. He had been on break from shooting the 7th installment. Production began in September, and while much of the film has been shot, it's incomplete. Universal Pictures had not said what it plans to do with the Fast and Furious 7, which currently is slated to release in July. Walker and Rodas has thrown a fundraiser benefiting victims of the recent typhoon in the Philippines. The event was held by Reach Out Worldwide, a charity Walker founded in 2010 to aid victims of natural disasters. The fundraiser and toy drive took place at Rodas Custom Car Shop, always involving in an area of warehouses and official parks. Rodas, 38, and Walker co-owned an auto racing team. Rodas competed in 10 Pirelli World Challenge GTS races this year, the racing organization said in a statement. Attendees rushed to the crash, which was nearby but out of sight, to try to put out the flames with fire extinguishers. One attendee of the event, Jim Thorpe, said he heard a loud sound of a car's engine revving and then an explosion. Walker and Rodas planned a quick ride, Thorpe said. The last words Paul said to anybody were, "Hey, I'll be back in 5 minutes. All right." And that was it. According to Thorpe said Rodas had a young son, whom he tried to stop from running to the accident scene, but could not catch him in time. Walker left behind 2 completed films. He stars in the upcoming Hurricane Katrina drama Hours, which Lionsgate Pantaleon Films is to release December 13th. He also stars in Brick Vengeance, a remake of the French action film District B13. The Relativity plans to release next year. His Fast and Furious co-stars react in shock the actor's death. Vin Diesel posted a photograph of him and Walker arm in arm on Instagram with the message, "I'm absolutely speechless." Lucadris said on Twitter, "Wherever you blessed your presence, you always left a mark. We were like brothers." Walker is survived by his 15-year-old daughter. Measles still poses threat to U.S. despite being eliminated. Measles may seem like a distant threat in the United States, but the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are warning the disease still poses a danger to U.S. residents. The CDC fears that because measles is so prevalent overseas, people who travel are bringing the virus back to the U.S. shores. Almost all of the 175 cases of measles reported thus far in 2013 were linked to people who had contracted the disease after traveling outside the country. A measles outbreak anywhere is a risk everywhere, CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden said in a press release. The steady arrival of measles in the United States is a constant reminder that deadly diseases are testing our health security every day. Someday, it won't be only measles at the international arrival gate, so detecting disease before they arrive is a wise investment in U.S. health security. Measles is a respiratory virus illness that grows in the cells that line the back of the throat or lungs. It can cause a fever, runny nose, cough, and a rash all over the body. It can lead to ear infections in 10% of the cases in kids, and 5% will develop pneumonia. Other complications include encephalitis and death. About 18 children every hour around the world died due to the measles, the CDC reported. There were 158,000 measles deaths across the globe in 2011 alone. A new research paper published in JAMA Pediatrics on December 5th shows that measles was eliminated in the U.S. from 2000 through at least through 2011. For a disease to be eliminated, there must be no continuous disease transmission for more than 12 months. However, in 2013, there are at least 175 cases and counting, significantly more than the typical 60 who contract the disease each year. The new report was released on the 5th anniversary of the measles vaccine. The CDC also published the latest figures on the global progress against measles in its journal Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. Dr. William Schaffner, an infectious disease expert at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine in Nashville, told USA Today that people might be surprised to learn that popular travel destinations in Europe are often where people contract measles. The CDC added that doctors should consider a person has contracted measles if they are displaying high fever and rashes, especially when associated with international travel or international visitors, and report the cases to their local health department. Before the measles vaccination program was started in the U.S. in 1963. Almost every child was infected by the disease, the CDC said. About 450 to 500 people died from it each year. 48,000 were hospitalized, 7,000 had seizures, and around 1,000 suffered permanent brain damage or deafness before the vaccine was distributed regularly. About 2.6 million deaths worldwide were attributed to measles until vaccination was available around the globe. In the 1980s, the report's authors noted, the CDC has and continues to push for more vaccination against measles, especially because the virus is so contagious that the majority of people have to receive protection to prevent an outbreak. The CDC has vaccinated 1.1 billion children globally since 2001 against the disease. They estimate that have prevented 10 million deaths, about one-fifth of all the deaths prevented by modern treasures. This is an eminently controllable, eminently eliminatable childhood virus infection, said Schaffner. But increasing anti-vaccination beliefs that may also be behind growing measles rate in the state. A recent CDC study showed that 82% of people who had contracted measles as of September 2013 were not vaccinated, and 9% were not sure if they had been vaccinated. Only 1 out of 5 countries have the ability to quickly detect, respond to, or prevent global health threat started by infectious disease, the CDC said. Because people are so mobile, a disease can spread globally in just 24 hours, Frieden pointed out. There may be a misconception that infectious diseases are over in industrialized world, but in fact, infectious disease continue to be and will always be with us. Global health and protecting our country go hand in hand, he said. Nelson Mandela, former South African president and global icon, dies at age 95. Nelson Mandela, who battled apartheid in South Africa before becoming its first democratic leader, died at his home in South Africa after several months of ongoing health problems. He was 95. South African President Jacob Zuma announced Mandela's death in an address to the nation late Thursday, saying, "We've lost our greatest son." Speaking from the White House Thursday, President Barack Obama said, "The former South African president no longer belongs to us. He belongs to the ages." Obama ordered U.S. flags lowered to help staff until sunset on Monday. Leaders from around the globe expressed similar sentiment about one of the world's most beloved. Mandela was, to many, the conscience of the world, a man who emerged from the tiny South African village, where he was born to become a defining figure of our time. Born Rililala, meaning troublemaker, on July 18, 1918, in the village of Mavazo, Nelson, as he was renamed by a school teacher, moved to Johannesburg at age 23. Mandela biographer Richard Stengel says exposure to this vicious racism of the white regime there permanently shaped him. One of the insidious ways that apartheid works is lower your self-esteem in the beginning, and then when you were mistreated, you feel like you deserved it, Stengel said. Mandela never for 1 second felt like he deserved to be mistreated in any way. One of the nation's first black lawyers, he joined the African National Congress in 1952 and devoted his life to peacefully ending apartheid. But in 1960, after 69 peaceful black protesters were killed by white South African police in the infamous Sharpeville massacre, Mandela shifted to believe the only resource was violence. There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against the government, whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people, Mandela said at the time. Mandela formed a military wing of the ANC, and the man once consumed with guilt for shooting a bird out of a tree became a fully armed freedom fighter. CBS News chief foreign affairs correspondent Lara Logan later covered the movement. Nelson Mandela was absolutely committed to some kind of peaceful change, Logan said, but he was smart. That wasn't going to happen. He saw that wasn't going to happen. He took his fight to the street and lived on the run. But in 1962, he was captured, convicted, and sentenced 2 years later to life in prison for sabotage and conspiracy. Robben Island, the Alcatraz of South Africa, became Mandela's personal hell, where authorities were bent on breaking his spirit. Though he was sealed off, the armed struggle continued, with Mandela's match as its guide and his wife Winnie carrying the torch. The violence continued, like the 1985 Trojan Horse massacre, a police ambush in a Cape Town suburb, filmed by CBS cameraman Chris Everson, but it only served to embolden the freedom fighter. Only by the late 1980s, pressure for Mandela's release was mounting. On February 11, 1990, after 27 years, 71 years old, Nelson Mandela walked free. CBS News correspondent Bob Simon was there. His head was high and his fist was clenched. Simon reported that way. Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison today like a chief of state. He didn't walk out with his shoulders like, "Hey, you see, I did it," said author Maya Angelou, who knew Mandela since 1960. Never. He walked out with the grace that was natural to him. Angelou said, the South African religious and anti-apartheid leader, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, said prison made the man. A fairly robust and aggressive young militant became a generous, understanding person, Tutu said. Later that year, Mandela and the South African president who freed him, F.W. de Klerk, shared a Nobel Peace Prize. 1 year after that, Mandela became South Africa's first black president. I cherish the idea of a new South Africa where all South Africans are equal, Mandela said, and the time for the healing of wounds has come. President Mandela worked hard to heal those wounds, choosing to serve only one 5-year term. He introduced free health care for children and stepped up government investment in housing, education, jobs, and infrastructure. It wasn't all positive, though. He once admitted that he was slow to deal with his country's exploding AIDS epidemic. Nelson Mandela personified struggle, a political prisoner who became a president, a towering leader who Tutu once said emerged from nearly a lifetime of oppression to save his homeland. He could so very easily have led our country down the road of retribution and revenge and we would have been Albert Creek, Tutu said. Mandela represents the best any of us can hope for, said Anglo. He was a great man, and I'm grateful. The world is better for having him. Iraq cafes advise how to stop a suicide bomber. As violence in Iraq has worsened with attacks hitting a wider array of targets, security officials have held an unusual seminar for cafe owners, how to stop a suicide bomber, from employing private security guards to reducing the number of open entrances. Officials gave tips on spotting and deterring militants, hoping to curb the country's worst wave of violence since 2008. Shootings and bombings have struck all manners of targets in Baghdad and elsewhere, but cafes, where football-mad Iraqis often gather to watch the latest European games, have been badly hit. Nearly 50 cafes have been bombed nationwide since unrest surged in April 25th in Baghdad alone. The most recent, a suicide bombing in the southwestern neighborhood of Beja, killed 15 people on November 21st. The security situation faced by cafes means they should appoint 1 or 2 guards and close all but one entrance to control the flow of people and stop terrorists who wear explosive belts and want to kill people in cold blood, said Major General Saad Jafar, Deputy Chief of Baghdad Security Command Center. Jafar also suggests that cafe proprietors install security cameras. The security forces need help from Iraqi citizens, he said, adding quickly, this does not mean the security forces are unable to protect the citizens. The violence has hit wide swaths of the population, from security forces and government officials to civilians visiting cafes, mosques and football pitches, with people killed at all times of day and night. In all, more than 6,000 have been killed this year nationwide, and nearly 950 in November alone, according to an AFP tally of reports from security and medical officials. Measures to tackle the bloodshed included essentially barring half of the cars from Baghdad Street on any given day, to trumpeting operations against militants that officials said have led to hundreds of arrests and the killing of dozens more. But the violence has not ceased, hurting trade for cafe owners whose businesses are typically packed, or matches ranging from Spain's La Liga to Britain's Premier League, as well as the exploit of Iraq's national team. Our work has fallen off a lot as a result of the terrorist attacks of recent months, said Moussa Mohammed, the owner of a cafe in Amil neighborhood, which itself suffered a twin bombing on October 20th that killed 40 people. Mohammed attended the seminar and said he was unlikely to follow all of the suggested measures. Appointing security guards at the entrance of the cafe and closing all the doors except for one will mean people will be completely unwilling to visit our cafes. They are the sources of our livelihoods, Mohammed said. Some owners, including Mohammed Mustafa, whose cafe is in Beja, where a November 21st attack happened, took the advice of heart but also urged the security forces to increase patrols, especially in areas frequented by large numbers. One suggestion from security officials was roundly rejected. The cafe owners closed at 8 p.m. to prevent increasingly frequent frequent evening attacks that had rocked the capital. After the terrorist attacks on cafes, the security forces in our neighborhood asked us to close, especially when Real Madrid is playing Barcelona and the cafes are packed, said Abdelaziz Yusuf, whose cafe is in the Jamia district. He was referring to the fears following the ethnic clash between the Spanish football rivals, known as the Clásico, engendered in Iraq. Is there any cafe in the world that closes its door when Real Madrid and Barcelona are playing? Yusuf asked incredulously. Australia's spy agency offered to share data on citizens. Report. Australia's spy agency offered to share information about its own citizens with foreign intelligence partners, according to leaked document published Monday, sparking calls for an inquiry. The latest revelations by U.S. intelligence fugitive Edward Snowden, reported by The Guardian Australia, show that the Defence Signals Directorate discussed the option of sharing medical, legal, or religious information. The partners include the United States, Britain, Canada, and New Zealand, collectively known as Five Eyes, with the document marked secret, based on notes from a conference hosted by Britain in 2008. It follows the Snowden release last month showing Australian spy agency try to listen to the phone calls of Indonesian President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, as well as his wife and inner circle, sparking a diplomatic crisis. According to the report, the DSD, now known as the Australian Signals Directorate, told its global partners it could share bulk, unselected, unminimized metadata as long as there is no intent to target an Australian national. Unintentional collection is not viewed as a significant issue. Note from the conference said, although the agency acknowledged the more substantial interrogation of the material would require a warrant. The Guardian said the document shed new light on the extent to which intelligence agencies at the time were considering sharing information with foreign surveillance partners. It provides further confirmation that, to some extent at least, there is warrantless surveillance of Australians' personal metadata. Metadata refers to the information people generate when they use technology such as phones and computers. The newspaper cited top human rights lawyer Jeffrey Robertson, saying the latest revelation increased concerns that the agency could be operating outside its legal mandate. Green Senator Scott Ludlam also said the document implies that the agency may have been breaching Australian law for 5 years, demanding an inquiry. The government can no longer avoid the issues and hide behind platitudes that everything is done in accordance with the law, Ludlam told Parliament. It is the job of this Parliament to conduct a full inquiry, as is happening in many other countries around the world. But Prime Minister Tony Abbott said he had no reason to believe any laws had been broken. Intelligence gathering is subject to supervision by the Joint Parliamentary Committee. It's also subject to supervision, very close supervision, from the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security, Abbott told reporters. I'm confident that we've got all the relevant safeguards in place, and I have no reason to think that any Australian intelligence organization has not acted in accordance with Australian law. Former U.S. National Security Agency contractor Snowden was granted asylum in Georgia in August, to the fury of the United States, where he is wanted on espionage charges following disclosures that have provoked international uproar and strained ties